Hi, and welcome to Real Estate Investors Library. Today we have Mike Eichler from the Poconos areas. And Mike is an investor agent and works with investors in a variety of ways and helps them find deals and manage deals and all those things. And he's really helped bring our clients some of the best properties we've seen over the last few years. And yeah, Mike. So we'd love to hear about your area yourself and what makes it a sweet spot for investors.
Yeah, thank you. Well, like you said, I'm a very short-term rental focused realtor. So I help people go from wanting to get into the Airbnb space to helping them find a house, helping them get pre-approved, um, going through that whole process, and then eventually getting closed and starting to renting. My team also does a lot of management in the area. So we have just under 100 properties in the Poconos Mountains kind of region. Um, but you could always work with me and then manage yourself if you wanted to as well.
That's great. That's great. And for investors looking for a short-term rental, what price points are they looking at in the Pocono market?
Yeah, well, there's really a lot of options in the Poconos because it kind of depends on what your appetite is for investing. I like to say some people like to get into the smaller, like kind of couples retreats. So like the 1 to 2 bedroom, maybe even studio properties that are going to rent out just to like basically 2 or 4 people, but usually two being couples. You can kind of pick those up. If you want to do some renovation, you can get one for probably around 200, 250. But if you want one that's kind of turnkey and ready to go for you, you're going to pay a little bit closer to about 300, 350. And you can go all the way up until like 800,000 to a million for a nice, larger, bigger property that's going to be 6, 7 bedrooms, and it's going to have like all the outdoor amenities and indoor stuff to kind of have fun. But really, any price point of work, depending on kind of what your appetite is.
Okay, great. Well, that's good because I know in California out here, it's hard to buy a bedroom for 350,000. I know
Yes.
reasons people have always been interested out there. In terms of loan programs for short-term rentals, um, do you have lenders that you could refer people to, and do you know what types of loan programs people can get, like a short?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of different loan programs out there nowadays, and my team has a bunch of different lenders we get connected with. I would say my favorite and what I always recommend people do is the 10% down second home loan, which is a loan that allows you to basically buy an investment property for only 10% down. Technically, the rule is you have to be there at least 2 weeks out of the year, which most people are gonna hit that anyway. But otherwise, you're allowed to fully rent out the house. Um, and then second to that, I would say the DSCR program is huge for a lot of investors. And basically, what that is it takes the income that the property is projected to make and uses that to qualify versus your own, personal income and credit. So for investment properties, that can be a really good deal as well. Usually 15 or 20% down on those.
Okay, yeah, those are great ideas. And in terms of an investor owning a short-term rental, are there tax advantages that stand out to you that investors can take advantage of if they buy one?
Yes, the number one thing in the short-term rental space is the cost segregation method, which basically goes and you have somebody do this for you, somebody who is specializing in cost segregation, some kind of tax guy. Um, and he will kind of break down all of the different things in your house. So the flooring costs, the materials for the driveway, basically break down every single thing in your house, and you can write those off over different periods. Because previously it was only you write the entire property off over 27 and a half years. But cost segregation allows you to super speed that process and write off a bunch more of that all up front. So you end up saving thousands and thousands of more dollars right off the jump.
Okay, oh, that's great. Okay, um, and then for an investor, look, obviously, a lot of times they'll buy the house, unless it's already, they're going to want to make it look good for Airbnb people to look at and want to click on. A lot of times that comes from furnishing and those. How much should an investor expect it to cost to really get a house ready to be a successful short-term rental?
Yeah, I mean it's really going to depend on the house. A lot of times in the Poconos market, you will have houses that are fully turnkey and ready to go. So they're already going to have the bedroom sets, and they're already going to have the hot tub outside and the fire pit, and all those kind of cool features. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they have some of those things, but maybe not all the right elements to kind of add in there. So you might want to budget to, change out some beds, or change out a mattress, or um, the living room couch, or something like that. So I usually like to say you definitely, at least for the Poconos market, want the hot tub and the sauna. That's going to run you about 10-ish thousand, maybe 12, depending on kind of how nice you go with that stuff. And then usually I like to say 10K plus 10K a bedroom for each house is kind of a good starting point to budget.
Okay, so about 20,000, and somebody could furnish it and look really good.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Now, is Poconos a market? Because some people obviously get into it and they say, "Hey, I don't want to have to get guests every single night, and this and that." They don't have time to do that. And I know that you manage, and we could get into that. In terms of Poconos and the market itself, is it a market where people go like during ski season, where you might be able to rent it as a midterm rental, meaning somebody's going to be there for 2 or 3 months during the season, maybe months during the summer? Is it a market? Is it a market that works type of rental?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely very possible. We typically only focus on the short-term rental side of things, just because that is going to have the highest upside, of course. Um, but yeah, like you mentioned, if somebody maybe doesn't have as much time, but they still don't want to give up so much kind of revenue to a management company, you could go with a midterm rental and grab somebody for a couple months. There's still a lot of traveling nurses up there in the Poconos,
Okay.
so even if you're not going to book somebody like a ski group for kind of just like during the winter. Even in the summer, the spring, and the fall, you could pick up a traveling nurse.
Okay. Sounds good. And what's the average time? Like, let's say somebody has a short term rental in Poconos. What's the average day that it either sits or gets rented? Uh, when somebody's doing their numbers.
Yeah, so small, medium, and large houses are gonna vary a little bit. Typically, with the small houses, you're gonna have higher occupancy just kind of year round because it's a little easier to fill up, a 1 or 2 bedroom place than it would be, say, 5 or 6 bedroom. Um, So generally those are going to be a bit higher, closer to like the 60, 70+% range a month. And your medium houses are going to sit roughly about 50 to 60%. And same thing with the larger houses, about 50 to 60%. Of course, you have to kind of change those rates due to seasonality. So obviously the rates are going to be a bit higher in the summer, and a bit higher in the winter than they would be in like the spring and the fall, where we have a bit of a slowdown. But you're still going to be pretty much rented out every weekend if you have a pretty decent house. And then really anything you kind of do to bridge yourself from just being a decent house to like a more of an outstanding house, that's where you're going to kind of start to poach the more weekday bookings year round.
Okay. Sounds good. Now, let's say there's a client who's not in the Poconos and they say, "Hey, I'd like to buy an investment. I need to know my expenses, but I don't have time to manage a short term rental." Maybe go into what your company does and how you can help investors if that's their situation.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like I mentioned at the beginning, my team has just under 100 units, all just short-term rentals in the Poconos. We also manage a resort property that we bought and renovated. That's 27 units, all in one place of short-term rentals. So basically, what we do is we make it very easy for our investors. We keep them totally hands-off. So we take care of the cleaning, the communication, the maintenance. Um, Basically anything that needs to be done for regular operation without having to get you involved. That's what we do. We take care of it. We have 24/7 staff on the ground and on the air. So if a guest has a question at 2 a.m. or 2 p.m., they'll get a message back within a couple minutes. And yeah, we basically just do it all.
That sounds great. And then in terms of expenses, obviously there's to have a system like that, there's a management expense, insurance, taxes. Let's just the number. Let's say somebody was collecting 5,000 a month in rent as a short-term rental. What would they look in the Poconos paying on that from taxes and insurance and that type of thing?
So the easiest rule I like to kind of throw out there with when you're looking at a managed property, it's 55 to 45%. So you're going to be 55% of the total, profit is going to be your profit, 55%, and then 45% are going to be expenses. So as
Okay.
long as you kind of use that, and that's not always like a hard and true rule, but it's going to be kind of pretty generally correct. But there will be some variances up or down depending on the house.
Okay. That's great. That's a good number to go with and easy to use. Are there areas in Poconos that by the Airbnb blitz of not being able to rent rentals? So there are areas out there like that.
Yeah, so regulation can be kind of tricky if you don't really know what you're doing, or you're kind of like new into the space, which is why it's great to have an expert kind of guide you. Because everywhere is a little bit different. You can have one community here that allows short-term rentals and one community here that doesn't allow short-term rentals, and they're literally next to each other and like they're basically the same thing. So you kind of just have to. It really just takes a lot of time and learning of which ones do, which ones don't, and then there are additional rules on top of that, like what kind of fees they associate, what kind of forms you have to fill out if you're going to have a guest come in and check in for a couple of days. Um, it's not really too crazy once you get the hang of it, or if you have somebody to kind of help you with it. But it can be very confusing at first. So yes, there are certainly areas that don't allow short rentals. There's even a couple areas that do allow short rentals that we tend to not look in, just because they might be too far from the ski resorts. Maybe their fees are too high, or just their regulations in general just aren't as favorable towards short-term rental. So we tend to go to some other different communities that are a bit nicer.
Makes sense. And what does it take? Let's say an investor watches this and says, "Hey, this sounds great. I'd like, be able to team up with Mike and find some short-term rentals and figure out more information." What would somebody do from here to get things?
What was that last part? You cut off a little bit.
Oh, what would somebody do to get things rolling with you?
Oh, I mean, pretty much just reach out to I guess either you or me, and get us connected, and then we'll hop on a quick, usually 15, 20-minute phone call. We kind of go over your goals, what you're looking for, how much cash you have. If you need recommendations from me for a lender to get you pre-approved, because we're going to need that before we put any offers in. Um, and then yeah, just kind of figure out what you want to look for, whether it be renovation or turnkey or even new construction we do, and then just helping you find it pretty much.
That's great. And I guess one follow-up question: are there homes? Because you had mentioned rehab a couple of times. Are there homes investors can buy that aren't necessarily ready for being a short-term rental, but they need some work? But investors, if they do that, they might have some equity when they're done with the rehab. Are there those types of homes available?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my favorite for that kind of stuff is buying something that's a bit larger of a house. So say a 4 or 5 bedroom house, that needs a lot of work, because you can usually pick those up for a good bit under market value, and then have lots of room to kind of renovate, go in there, do your kitchen, do your bathroom flooring, whatever needs to get done. And then a lot of my guys end up actually either refinancing, and keeping it as a rental, or they'll just sell it off to another person in the market, and then trade it up for something bigger. So that's what I also like about that, is you can kind of pivot after you're finished the renovation, and you have a lot of different options as well.
Oh wow, yeah, that's exciting. Okay. Well, hey, that sounds great, Mike. I appreciate you going through this with me, and yeah, we're gonna get this posted and let people know kind of what you're doing. I know it's exciting. I've seen the numbers, and I mean, it's really exciting what you have going on there. And I appreciate you spending a few minutes with us and going through it. Uh, yeah, hopefully get some investors and go from there.
Thank you. Yeah, it was awesome. Great to chat with you.
Okay, sounds good. Well, have a good one.
Yes, you as well.
Okay.